Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma,
And I'm MC.
and we are your hosts of the G Forces podcast. So it has been a minute since we've recorded an episode.
More like a month.
Yeah, it's been more than a minute. It's been like 30 days, but that's just because of summer break, and we also had things we had to do. We needed a break as well.
Well, we moved, as you can tell.
Yeah, we have a
now
new
in
setup.
a new location. Very exciting. But also, I think the general consensus was that it was just a really slow summer season.
Yeah.
I think for what was expected, it didn't have the drama that I think we were building up. So overall, it was quite uh a very quiet summer.
Yeah, I would agree. We only had like one big announcement, I think.
I think a lot of the announcements that were made were about people on a more higher exec facing side.
Yeah.
I know that there was a lot of movement in Mercedes. I think Sauber has a few people, but I think that it's less names that everyone would recognize.
Yeah. The only driver that was announced was Carlos to Williams, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Well,
think that
actually,
wasn't it. Who was confirmed right at the beginning? Was there anyone right at the beginning of the season? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but it was confirmed that Checo's not out.
I don't
Red
believe
Bull was
anything Christian Horner says.
Red Bull was like, "Don't worry, guys. It's Checo's just we're still working on it, but maybe."
Well, did you actually see the Natalie Pinkham interview?
No.
I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
In the debrief. Something that also happened technically during summer break because it was before the first race. It was announced that Jack Doohan will be the other Alpine driver for next year, which we are very excited about.
I think we needed some faces that people recognize but hadn't been given the chance yet. This is something that we've talked about constantly about this kind of there's 3 to 5 years of guys who are just stuck.
Yeah.
And Jack being a reserve driver for Alpine, it's just kind of one of those stories that are nice to see because we've seen so many of the guys come up through their programs and then some relationship falls apart. Cough, cough, Oscar Piastri. But I think this is nice to see. It's refreshing. I was sitting here really freaking out that Carlos was going to end up taking the spot. Happy to see Carlos at Williams. You know where I stand on that. But I think I'm really excited to see Jack given the chance.
Yeah.
And I think it's refreshing the fact that we now have Jack, we now have Ollie. Is there anyone else new so far?
At the moment, I think that's the only two. But we all know that Kimi Antonelli might be getting the Mercedes seat, so that's a possibility. I think that's it.
Yeah. But it's nice to see new faces. Sad to see some old ones go, but also sometimes it's just time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that was announced.
I have two things. So it was confirmed that Oscar Piastri broke his rib during the Austrian Grand Prix and continued to race unknown to spectators, making his debut win with a broken rib. So that was, how the mighty are.
One other thing that's kind of been going on, not related to the drivers, the teams, but with F1 content creators, I still think it's important to talk about, is apparently F1 has been sending cease and desist letters to a lot of F1 content creators. We haven't gotten any. Thankfully. If we did, I don't know if you're allowed to tell people if you got a cease and desist letter.
Honestly, I don't really know. I haven't been served one ever
Yeah, I
so
know.
far in my life. I mean,
We have opinions on it. We're not gonna share them all just because we don't want F1 to dislike us.
we're teeny tiny guys. We're just trying to have fun.
Yeah, luckily we didn't have F1 in any of our branding, so we think that's probably why we didn't get a cease and desist
You
letter.
can't trademark a unit of measurement, which is a G-force. So,
Yeah.
love that. But I think it's tough. I think it's a little bit sticky. I think content creators are really a forward leaning form of media for a lot of the younger generation. So I think it's interesting when you're having something like content creators being sent cease and desist, but then at something like the DNC, over 200 content creators are invited. So, you know, maybe it's not in the brand, but well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so if you do notice some of your favorite like F1 podcasts or content creators have completely rebranded, my guess is they were likely one of the ones who were served cease and desist letters. Um,
But we can't really comment further because
yeah,
we
we
don't
weren't
really,
served
we weren't
one,
served them, and we
but
don't know anyone personally who
yeah,
was.
keep an eye on the ones that you do really like because they're probably rebranding and they might have to change the whole name of their
Yeah, so
brand.
if you're looking for some people, they might be under a new name.
Yeah, so it might be a little difficult to find it. I would recommend just searching their podcast name on Google. That's what I did for some people, and that's how I was able to find what they were rebranding to. So definitely try that if you can't find certain ones. Um, okay.
I have one last news announcement.
Yeah, go for it.
So going back to more mainstream racing news, it was finally announced. There was a lot of conversation when Lewis announced he was going to Ferrari, what was going to happen with him and Bono. Uh, it was confirmed that Bono was promoted to the head of race engineering for Mercedes. And this basically solidified that he won't move with Lewis to Ferrari.
Yeah.
Apparently, this is gonna be a very similar role to what GP is for Red Bull. I believe GP is the head of race engineering at Red Bull, as well as the race engineer for one of the drivers. And from what the rumor mill and a few of the articles I was reading said, Bono will maintain his role as
Yeah.
a race engineer for a driver. We just don't know who yet. But he will also be taking over race engineering.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's good to also remember that most people who are working for F1 teams, they usually have more than one role. So, like the pit crew, they're not just the pit crew. A lot of them might end up being the mechanics as well. And because during a race, as a mechanic, you don't have to be doing anything to a car, they will be the ones who are also changing tires and doing everything else. So, this is just another example of people having two roles within a team.
yeah. Men and women of many talents.
Correct. All right. Well, I think we can get into it. All right, Mary Catherine, where are we?
You know, I thought for the beach it was gonna be warm and breezy and sunny,
In the
but
Netherlands? No.
Netherlands, not so much. So this weekend, to kick off the final leg of this season, we were at the 2024 Dutch Grand Prix. So the official race name is the Formula One Heineken Dutch Grand Prix 2024. 2024. The circuit name is rather famous. It's the Circuit Zandvoort. It's talked about a lot. It's basically, it hasn't been on the schedule modernly very long. It was on the schedule up until 1985 and then was not on the schedule for 35 years and back on in 2020 or 2021. But um it's basically one of those racetracks that everyone talks about. It's like Zandvoort, Spa. I think it's just the angles, the speed are very exciting. The first Grand Prix overall was held in 1952, and the circuit length is 4.259 kilometers. The drivers did 72 laps, and the race distance was 306.587 kilometers. There are 14 turns on the circuit, and the fastest lap is held by Lewis Hamilton, racing in a Mercedes in 2021, and he did that lap in a minute 11.097 seconds. There are 2 DRS zones at Zandvoort. So DRS detection zone 1 is right before turn 10, and activation begins after turn 10 through to turn 11. And then the DRS detection zone 2 is right after turn 12, and activation begins after turn 13 all the way to the first turn. Turn 1 of this course is called Tarzan. You'll hear it mentioned a bunch. The rumor online, because we were asking, we're like, what's the significance? The rumor online is that apparently it's nicknamed after a local landowner or character in some articles, who agreed to give up the land of a certain section of Zandvoort if they named something after him. So apparently this man's name was Tarzan.
Here I was thinking it was about like Disney Tarzan.
I thought it had like some reference to like even pre-Disney, like the black and white Tarzan, like the old films, but I was like, I don't know what the correlation, like, yeah, it didn't make much sense to me. But now it makes sense. So
Good to know.
hopefully that's true. It was on a few articles. So other than that, the course is literally right on the beach in the dunes, which for some reason, I think this was like still around the time of like when we were just getting into the sport. And so I think I was less focused on location last year. And so when Chris was designing he does the track map art, when he was designing it, I was like, there's dunes? This is literally on a beach. Like, you could drive into
There's
the
a
water.
reason why there's so much banking on this track. It's because of the dunes.
I just thought it was a circuit decision. I didn't think it was because of the dunes. I thought, maybe they just wanted crazy turns.
I mean, they probably wanted crazy turns, but the dunes kind of make it impossible to not
The
have those
dunes
banking.
help. They help
Yeah.
the vibe.
They make it really interesting.
Yeah. But
this, in fact, was our very first race that we went over last year as a podcast.
Really?
Yeah, because it was the first race back from summer break as well. And we formed the podcast last year during summer break. So we did our first trailer episode, then our silly season Who is Jim Clark episode, and then we did the Dutch Grand Prix recap.
Wow.
Which last year was a bit more of a wild weekend with Danny breaking his wrist.
Yeah, that is solidified into my memory.
I will never forget that moment. Literally, as I was watching it this weekend, I'm like, where is that turn? I remember that turn.
Yeah. But, yeah, so that's Zandvoort. I love it. I like it. The Dutch always come out in full orange force.
Gotta love it. One of my favorite things is that the trains from Amsterdam to Zandvoort are named the Max Express for the weekend.
Noah Khan was there.
He was going to several different teams. He started with McLaren. Oh my God, McLaren. Sorry if we're talking weird, guys. We have a new audio setup and it's throwing us off.
Yeah, we're just getting used to it. So I feel like we're talking inarticulately.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself say something 2 seconds after I said it as I'm still talking, and I'm getting really thrown off. But anyways, he started at McLaren, then went to V-Carb, and then was at Red Bull for a bit. I don't know. It was random, to be honest.
I think he had a concert. He was in that part of the world for a concert. So, I mean, hey, if
That
multiple
makes sense.
teams wanted to invite me and I was Noah Khan, I would walk around the block.
I feel like it makes sense for him to go to multiple teams.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to practice. Okay, so this weekend started off very rainy. Makes sense for that area of the world. But yeah, it was quite rainy, so everybody started off on wet tires for FP1.
Additionally, Robert Schwartzman, who we've seen around Ferrari most of the time, he switched up and he was in Bottas's Sauber for FP1. But I think this is less who's getting the second Sauber seat and more just like putting him in, because apparently the rumors are that Robert is going to be moving over to IndyCar. So we'll see what happens with that second Sauber seat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Bottas wasn't in FP1, but Robert Schwartzman was instead.
So Gasly was the first one out on the track, and he was on oh my gosh, I'm really getting thrown off by this new audio switch. Anyways, Gasly was out first, and he was with wet weather tires. It's a tongue twister. Try saying wet weather tires 12 times fast. I'm not going to. And people were having a hard time staying on track, so Hulkenberg actually went off track. He went off track multiple times.
In multiple practices, like I was struggling.
I think I have notes of him going off on every practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also so much Haas drama, guys.
I didn't read up on it before this.
We'll look into it before the end of us recording, and we'll let you know what's going on.
Yeah, I just have, but we'll get to that. I don't have much besides Max had to spin out, but was able to correct it, which made the crowd go wild. This is his hometown race, so obviously the people are gonna go wild for him. Yeah, I think it was just pretty soaked, but it was drying faster than most people thought. So by the end of this session, there were a few drivers that were able to put on slicks.
Yeah, it was about the last 10 minutes people
Yeah.
were putting them on, and then they were just topping the timesheets after that. So definitely a lot of track evolution throughout this race. Well, not race, practice. Oh my gosh. It's like we haven't recorded in a month and I forgot all the words to say. All right. Second practice of the weekend. It was dry now, but the wind wasn't great because it is on the water.
Yeah, and there's wind near the ocean.
Is it on the ocean?
Or is it a sea? Or a lake? No.
It's not a lake, I don't think so, but I don't know what kind of body of water it's on.
We'll look that up before the next segment as well.
We sound like dumb Americans right now, not knowing the geography of Europe, but you try to name what the first 13 colonies were.
Oh my god. Okay. So, like Emma said, rain was no longer a problem, but the wind was obvious. And then this is where it really kind of hit Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
He went out around turn 1, which then caused him to go across gravel, which then caused him to hit a wall, which damaged his newly upgraded car. So, kind of blows, especially with all the upgrades. But prior to this big accident, there were a handful of other drivers that were slipping. So it wasn't just him. It was like everyone.
Yeah, George, Checo, Max, a few others, they all were spinning and having issues. So that was one of the big ones throughout this practice. There was another issue. So Carlos actually started to have a gearbox problem.
Yeah.
He came into the pits, and then it was bad enough that he couldn't resume the practice. And then Oscar also had to go in and change helmets.
Oh, yeah, he had some visibility issue. All of a sudden, he like got on the radio. This is pretty early on in the session.
Yeah.
He got into the radio and was like, I can't really see. And they were
And
like,
visibility is important, in fact, if you didn't know
yeah.
that.
So then they kind of went into like the breakdown of the visor and the tear offs in the practice session because I don't
Yeah.
think that's something we've ever really spoken about. But basically, if you don't know, there's the helmet. So think of like your typical motorcycle helmet, but obviously like for F1 and probably more enforced and intense and safe. And then they'll have these basically like plastic coverings over the visor section because when you're driving, I mean, just think about the bugs alone that are going to end up on your freaking windshield. Well, they don't have a windshield. They have the halo and their face. So they tear them off if they get like schmutz or I don't know if the visibility becomes difficult. But David Coulthard was like, I wonder if there's something wedged because normally it's like 3 to 4 layers of plastic.
No, there's like a lot more because they're given a certain amount of tear offs for every single like driving session. So imagine you're racing for 2 hours, all the bugs, all of the rain, all of the schmutz and squamous on your face. So they would need a lot more than like 3 or 4 because over 2 hours, that's a lot.
It's a lot of shit flying at your face.
Yeah, it is. So,
But yeah, so he got that figured it out. He came in. They already had a second helmet ready. They never went further. But
yeah.
yeah.
So that was FP2. And then for FP3, it was a wet track again. Oscar was out on inters actually. Just figured he'd try it out. And he was slipping and sliding everywhere. We also had Hulkenberg crash again. Well, not crash. Well, he had a braking issue at turn 11 and he went into the barrier slightly.
Yeah, it wasn't as big as like what happened next.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 15 minutes into the session, Logan Sargent had a huge crash, which then resulted into the back of the car going on fire. The driver was completely fine. He was able to jump out. Well, not completely fine. He was able to get out of the car. He was able to signal to his team that he was okay. But I believe there was a bunch of upgrades made to the Williams.
There was.
Specifically around their floor. And this did quite a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It was a rough crash. Like, just.
It was on fire.
Yeah. No shit. But I'm saying he hit hard.
Yeah.
Like it was a hard crash. He's lucky he was able to like hop out of the car, get out. There were no further issues. But because of this, the level of damage that was done to the perimeter as well as just like, fire, the marshals had to take a lot longer to put the green flag up again. So nothing happened until there was like 2 minutes left of the session, and then it just became like fast laps. But it was funny because you could see the intensity of Williams wanting to throw that cloth over the car, but they couldn't because the car was smoking when it still came to the pit lane. So yeah, it was a mess, but I don't know. We know Logan's out of F1. I hate to see it. Like, I just want the kid to score points.
I just want him to have
merit-based.
Yeah, I want him to have a happy rest of the season. I don't want to see him crash anymore. I don't want to see him in pain. I just feel like my heart breaks every single weekend for him.
Yeah, and I feel like there have been, like, between him, Joe, Danny, there's been a few guys this season that are, like, not able to get out of it.
Yeah.
They're just rolling with the punches.
Yeah.
But yeah, because of that, there really wasn't much. A lot of people just went out, did fast laps, resulting in kind of a funny top three. So the top three of FP3 were Pierre, Kevin, and Valtteri, which, just shows you how little amount of time people were able to get on track. But
Yeah, it was kind of a waste of an hour.
at the end of the day, the most important aspect is that Logan is okay.
Correct.
So I think people would rather take 2 minutes of running time than a damaged driver.
Correct.
So, yeah.
All right, we are going to go over quali now. Qualifying. The first qualifying back from summer break.
I'm honestly so grateful that it wasn't a sprint weekend. Because if it was a sprint weekend, I don't think my brain could have done it. Like, if they were like, let's get back into it.
It was also an F1 Academy weekend, and
With, like, no...
they didn't talk about it.
Yeah. We didn't
Icky.
watch it either. So, shame on us.
Well, we will be watching it later.
Yeah, we will. But, anyways, Q1.
So, really, nothing crazy happened until the very end when Carlos was at risk and he throws a really good lap out there and ends up jumping from like 18th to like second or first or something. And so then he was no longer at risk. And that's kind of it for Q1.
It was unclear if Logan was going to end up racing. Apparently his garage, not apparently, I watched it. They opened up his garage, which apparently is like a sign that there's like the prospective opportunity to go out. Ultimately, the car just wasn't ready. If the car was ready, that would have been such a feat by the mechanics. The fact that it was even an option for them to open up that garage just shows you how hard they were working. Obviously, I think they had to do like spare chassis and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
still, it's just nice to see, especially since this is a team that got so much fucking shit at the beginning of the season because they didn't have that spare chassis. That it's like, obviously no one wants to use it. That's a lot of money that really got burnt up this weekend, but it's just nice to see him prepared.
I also would be interested to know if Logan was okay to drive because of how hard of a crash it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long after practice, so it would have, like, if he wasn't feeling well.
If he wasn't feeling well, I mean, the shock on his body, just like the adrenaline, the exhaustion. It could be an amalgamation of things, but...
Amalgamation. That's a great word.
Thanks.
Anyways, so those who got kicked out in Q1 were Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, and then obviously Logan Sargent because he didn't even go out. Q2.
Oh, wait. In Q1, there was a lot of focus on an impeding issue between Lewis and Checo.
Yes, there was.
They kept bringing it up, and apparently there was audio. Checo was all like, they're typical, like, what an idiot. And then the person who is actually the idiot is like, I was fine. Well, it got brought up again in Q2 I think the stewards were like, finally in Q2 they were reviewing this incident.
Yeah.
So this was like something that kept being brought up, which would ultimately affect Lewis in the race.
Yeah.
So
Q2, we see some surprise outings.
Yeah.
Not that surprising because some of these people have had hard qualifyings before.
I think the Ferraris and Lewis being in the Q2 realm have been struggling to get to Q3 sometimes.
I would agree.
And I don't want to say... I just don't get it. Like, why? Maybe they're risking it. Maybe it's strategy that they're doing quali, but...
Maybe some tracks are just not good at. Like,
maybe it's their one lap race, like, versus their race pace.
Maybe, but we only came back to this track 3-4... This is the 4th year since, like, the 80s or 90s? 80s. And so that means, like, Lewis, someone who's been racing since, like, 2008 or something in F1, he hasn't raced on here in years. And so other tracks he's used to racing on, where this one, it's brand new basically to him. He might have raced on it in like younger series, but again, that would have been years ago. And so people like Max could have raced on that track in like 2013, but Lewis, it would have been probably early 2000s was the last time he raced on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, so we did have one really awesome performance in Q2. We saw Alex Albon end at P5. Love to see it.
Love to see it.
It's kind of a waste, but we'll get to that
Not
one.
I it's not his fault.
It's not his fault, but I don't know whose fault it is. I don't want to say.
Did you say who was knocked out of Q2?
I was just getting there.
Do you want me to or do you want to?
You can do Q3 because I only wrote down the top 3 finishers of Q3.
Okay. I have all 10.
Q2, those who were knocked out: Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, and Kevin Magnussen. The Haas's were struggling. I think they've got the bad juju energy around them. It was a full moon this past week. The witches are working against them. Anyways, Q3.
Haas's. We'll get there. Q3. So even though at the beginning qualifying it was pretty nice out, apparently rain was like an impending threat. And so, of course, like we've said before, I love the threat of rain. It makes everyone move. Max at one point was able to put the top time out, but Lando was able to put in a lap. That ultimately was the final like lap time, and it was 0.3 of a second faster than Max. So, honestly, qualifying was pretty tame. I feel like there was like the few upsets in like Lewis and Carlos, but
it was a pretty average It was a pretty average weekend.
I think there were some amazing moments of realization of where certain teams are this weekend, but I think overall it kind of like you can tell everyone's coming back from vacation. Like there's just the chill vibes.
Everyone's tan, I must say. I'm quite jealous of that.
Yes. So the top 10 ended up being Lando in first, Max in second. Oscar attempted to get into that second spot, but wasn't able to pass Max's time. George got fourth, Checo fifth, Charles sixth, Fernando seventh, Alex eighth, Lance ninth, 10 Pierre. I'm going to be honest with you right now. I don't think I have a single note about Aston Martin from this weekend.
No.
I can't tell you a single thing that happened with that Aston Martin.
And it makes me sad. I love hearing from Fernando.
I mean, I miss him, but like...
The most we heard from Fernando was his thirst trap Instagram story the other day that MC
missed. It's fine. I'll get over it. Maybe it's for the best. Anyways, but yeah, so that was the top 10. Unfortunately, it ended up coming out that post-quali, Lewis Hamilton was handed a 2-place grid penalty.
3-place.
Oh, 3-place. So
which I personally disagree with the steward's opinion on that one, just because I didn't think it looked like he was impeding much. Like, Checo was able to get around him perfectly fine and safely.
I'll be honest, I didn't even look at the moment that he impeded.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything.
Like, I don't think it was enough that I noticed.
It wasn't egregious.
Yeah.
We're using so much big vocabulary today.
Look at us. And then additionally, Alex Albon was disqualified from quali due to floor irregularities on the updated car. So for those that are new, he was not booted from the entire race, unlike Emma's original concern, which is okay because due to the language, one would think he's out.
They just said Alex Albon has been disqualified. That's all the posts were saying. So what else was I supposed to think?
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's like re-sign and resigned.
Okay, I made that mistake once, saying that I posted something that
In our early
Charles
days.
had re-signed with Ferrari, but I forgot the dash in between re and sign. And so therefore I said Charles had resigned with Ferrari. Which the day that Charles resigns from Ferrari, I will not make that mistake again, guys.
But yeah, so essentially this just means that Alex's times are deleted and then he has to start from the pit lane. So almost similar to what's going to end up happening to Logan Sargent because he didn't put a time on the board. I think you just start from the pit lane.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the change to the grid prior to the race. But then weather-wise, because I do feel like we discussed the weather before every race, around the race, it was so much better than the prior 2 days. It was not miserable. The wind was a problem, though.
Yeah, because it's on a body of water.
A body. We don't know what. But
it's a mystery, actually. Nobody knows.
Yeah. But those were the 2 grid changes that changed.
Well, and K-Mag ended up starting from the pit lane because he had some changes to his car.
I think it was like power unit changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's everything for qualifying. So now we're going to get into the race, which wasn't that crazy.
It was exciting in terms of what the McLaren can do right now.
And that's about it.
Okay.
You'll hear in 0.2 seconds. All right, so it's race day. Today actually was race day. Anyways.
Every day's race day.
Technically, it is a race probably for someone somewhere in the world every day.
Most drivers were on the mediums for this race to start
Correct.
off.
They were. There were a few drivers that were not. I don't know who it was. I can't remember personally. MC, do you have that?
I don't.
Okay, but there were like 3 drivers who had something else. That doesn't matter for now. All right, lights out. Away we go, as we do. And shocker, Max passes Lando off the start. Couldn't have told you that was going to happen, ever.
I think when we were talking about this, I think yesterday after qualifying, this isn't the first time that Max and Lando have been at the front of the grid. So it's not surprising. I think what was surprising about the start was the lack of speed that both McLarens had in the start.
Yeah, it's like the car wasn't working off the start. They just had no grip.
It was like they were driving through mud and everyone else was on asphalt.
Yeah, for some reason, their tires, I think, just got really cold really fast off of the formation lap, where everybody else seemed to be fine. I think that this could be just an overall problem for McLaren. I think that's why they're able to hold their tires for a lot longer than others, because they don't overheat. And it usually takes them a couple more laps for them to get them up to the temperature that they need to be. So I think that they might be like almost really delicate on their tires, so it's not too hot, but that can bite them in the ass at the start, really benefit them later on.
So because of this, George moved past Oscar, taking 3rd, and then Lando was pushed back to 2nd, and Max took the lead, much to the crowd's chagrin.
Another big word. Oh my goodness, we're so smart.
Max at first appeared to be opening a gap, which honestly, I just assumed this was like he was feeling his Dutch roots and breathing the air of his people and was just gonna zoom through. Like, I really thought it was gonna be like a
It was the
blowout.
Stroop Wobbles fueling him.
If he even likes them. But I was like, I genuinely think like Red Bull is back. And then
They're not back.
they're not.
They're so
not.
not back.
They're not.
Sorry, guys. Not my problem, though. We have Lewis pass Yuki for 12th because Lewis started, what was it? Like 15th or something? Because of his 3 place grid penalty. So he's just working his way up at this point. And we're also finding out that Max is starting to have issues turning the car. And if you look at his driver cam, it does not look good. It genuinely looks difficult to turn the car.
I also didn't use the word chagrin correctly, so just like cut that
Okay,
out.
so we're not smart.
No.
That's really disappointing.
And this is when we stop using big words.
I think we should only use big words when we definitely know what they mean.
It's okay.
What does it mean?
It's like to be distressed, like humiliated, having failed, like very basically the complete opposite.
So very
of
much
the way the Dutch
not
people.
to the chagrin.
They were not. Yeah.
Okay, you kind of used it correctly. Just forgot the not.
The not. Yeah.
That's fine. Anyways,
it's the new audio, guys.
It is. It really is. It's really messing with our heads. Okay, so Lando's car is having a hard time with grip. Shocker. We see K-Mag in the gravel at lap 7, and I thought that was going to be the end for K-Mag, but he ended up making it to the like escape road. I'm saying escape road like it's a video game, but yeah, he made it to the escape road so that he could get back onto the track and was totally fine. Did start far back though because of that. What else?
Lando did start to walk up in the first like 10-ish laps. Like once the gap was formed,
it was only like 1.5 seconds that Max was able to pull away, and it never got really any bigger than that.
Yeah. I have my next is lap 13. What's yours?
Mine is also lap 13 about Alex Albon going into pit. So Alex Albon pitted at lap 13. Any comments on that?
He's the first to do so. So they're
the first ever to ever pit.
Oh my god. So no one had pitted, and there was a lot of discourse on whether this was going to be a 1-stop or a 2-stop. Him stopping at 13 confirmed that they were just going to do a 2-stop. But I think it goes to show you that he was the first person to pit at lap 13, whereas Oscar doesn't pit for another 20 laps.
Yeah.
Like, so frustrating. So it just shows you the length, but
yeah. We then see Lando pass Max finally at lap 18. He had gotten DRS and was able to pass him. And it was a really smooth pass, I must say. It was a lot of like late braking into the turn, kind of blocking Max so that he could actually cut him off in the turn. In the words of Max, it might have been considered dive bombing, but I think it was just a pass.
I do think it's interesting too because Lando did use DRS to pass Max, but he passed Max lap 18. 6 laps later, there was already a 4-second gap.
I also had that note.
So I think it's like, it is just showing you right away in the first 24, 25 laps how much faster the McLaren is right now.
So, the McLaren, yes, is the fastest car on track in clean air. The moment it's in dirty air, it's screwed.
It struggles to pass.
Yeah, and that's why we keep seeing Oscar struggle, because he's always in dirty air, and he just cannot get past someone. That's why he stays like 1 to 3 seconds behind cars and can't pass them, because it's just he's shit out of
stuck.
luck,
Yeah.
unfortunately. We see Charles pit at like lap 25-ish, which ended up helping Oscar because Oscar was in dirty air. We also see Max then pit at lap 28. Lap 22, Alex Albon had the fastest lap. I think it was just because he got new tires before everybody else
But
did.
still, amazing.
Yeah, we're not going to take that accomplishment away. It didn't last long, but you had it. That's all that matters in the end. Lap 31. So, what was it? Lando, I didn't write down what lap Lando went in, but I think it was around lap 28, similar to when Max pitted. And Lando comes out behind Oscar because Oscar was then put into the lead. And McLaren, you are killing me. Every race I watch, I see Oscar suffer.
And the worst part is, it's at the hand of like 2 laps.
It always happens in the matter of 1 to 2 laps.
It's the middle tire decision. They cannot figure out the timing of pitting Lando and Oscar.
I think pit Lando and then call Oscar in immediately after.
I don't know why, and they've done this with both of the drivers.
Yeah.
Like, we've literally seen this happen with both the drivers. But it's really, in my opinion, affecting Oscar's ability to move past these cars more.
Yeah.
Because it's like he had this 7 to 8 second gap, and then in 2 laps, it goes down to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And it's like, at that point, why did you have him out there?
Why did you keep him out an extra lap too long? If you started to see the time dropping that much, you should have called him in.
But I did see the post-race show. There was, like, Ruth Buscom-Davie was now showing, like, a graph that all the race engineers view, and it has, like, just basically, like, a chart, like, a line graph that, I think shows, like, times and degradation, and on the race engineering's, like, whatever graph she was showing, I'm not explaining this well at all, because I don't know exactly what the report was, but I don't think the degradation was, like, as bad on paper as it, like, was all of a sudden. Like, I don't think it was projected to drop that many seconds. But again, we've had this happen before with McLaren.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moral of our bitching and moaning is...
Figure out your tire strategy in the middle of the race.
And let's stop fucking with Oscar. Sorry, Mom, for the cursing.
Oh my God. So, because of this, Oscar was finally pitted at
lap
33, dropping to 5th place, which was to be expected. Like, he was not going to come out into first, but I don't think he would have dropped that far back and ended up having to pass George, but, you know, whatever. Lando was growing the gap while this is happening, and eventually the gap between him and Max is around 10 seconds. But also, Oscar, with his new tires, was able to start to walk on George.
Yeah, we also... I don't remember seeing this happen, but I was looking at the post-race, like, report, and at some point, Lance was given a 5-second penalty because of speeding in the pit lane. Basically, he wasn't able to stop fast enough at the entrance to the pit lane.
Yeah, he locked up.
Yeah. I don't remember that.
I don't think they showed us when it happened because, again, no one was talking about Aston Martin. From what I read, he had a lockup, which caused him not to be able to come down to, like, the proper speed. So it was just, like, happenstance.
Well, it happens.
Yeah.
Anyways, there was a really sick pass that was made on K-Mag by 4 different drivers, which Alex Albon said was unsafe, which I don't disagree with that, but it was really cool to watch, to be honest.
From a spectator's from us watching, I turned to Emma and I was like, watch them use this in the freaking movie. Because it was like a Fast and Furious. I'm sorry. I know all the old fans are about to vomit because I'm making this comparison, but it felt like a Fast and Furious moment. Or like
Oh,
something that would be in
100%.
like the Cars movies when
Yeah,
they would show, like it literally would be in the Cars movies. That's a better
definitely.
comparison. Um,
So basically, K Mag, I don't think he had gone to get new tires yet. And so he was going pretty slow. And then all of a sudden, Alex Albon comes around one side of him. And
as the
then,
Aston Martins come up the other side.
and Pierre Gasly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they all just pass him kind of at once. And his onboard driver cam is so savage, but it was such a cool thing to see. I don't know if I would have recovered if I were him. I would have been like, well, that's it. I should just go in.
Yeah. It was a very cool clip. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But yeah. Um,
By the time that we got to lap 45, it was basically just let's drive around in circles to the end in this exact same order.
pretty much.
Because the order at that point was Lando, Max, Charles, Oscar, George, Checo, and Carlos. The only change that happened out of that was a few laps after that, Carlos had passed Checo. But after that, even in the race report, they were like, and then Lando won. That's it.
Yeah. He had such a large gap.
It's a Max Verstappen level gap.
So by lap 45, Lando's gap was up to 12 seconds. And then with 10 laps left, his gap was now close to 15 seconds. And then by the end, he was not only able to achieve the fastest lap, I believe in the final or the second to final lap, but he was able to win first with 22.8 seconds between him and Max. Max coming in second place. That is just not expected. Like, not,
No.
I'm not complaining, but I just think this was not a level of performance anyone thought McLaren was going to bring to the table.
No, I think a gap that large was something that people expected from Red Bull at the beginning of the season, but something that large I don't think people expected to continue for any team. And I don't know if it's going to happen again, to be honest. I would be surprised.
You did make mention at the end of the race that one thing you've noticed over all the races we've watched is that Red Bulls struggle in the wind.
Red Bulls struggle in not perfect conditions.
I mean, they all do.
Yeah, but the Red Bull in particular, the Red Bull's not good on a street course. They're not good kind of in the rain. They're not good when it's too hot or it's too cold. It's like it's a Goldilocks car.
Yeah, well, what does that make? Max like, because that's the thing. The car, it's more like, I think Max is so adaptable, but it seems like recently this is like, I feel like he's complained about the performance of the cars significantly more this season than last season.
Oh,
Like,
definitely. I also think ever since the Adrian Newey news was announced, the car has kind of gone to shit because I think he's like hands off. I can't do anything
that
else.
was my other thing was I would be so curious, and we'll never know, but I would be so curious to see if, Adrian knew he made the announcement. He was like, I'll work so hard for the next 9, whatever, however months. Or if it was like, hey, every month I'm doing less and less. Like, I'm transitioning out of this.
I think that's probably
But
it.
I think the surprising thing is that, like 15 episodes ago when the Adrian Newey stuff was announced, we were discussing it and we literally said, we're like, oh, well, Adrian Newey's been there for so long. Like, he has to have people underneath him who are going to, like, really be able to fill those shoes.
Do we think he's the kind of person to train others, or
I honestly know so little besides his race engineer. I know nothing. But from everything I've heard in all the interviews, apparently people praise him, say he's very nice. Like, so
I'm
I don't know.
sure.
I just, it's so surprising how much Red Bull is struggling.
I think,
And I mean, yes, he's coming in second place, so like he's still doing well. But I think the fact that not only is the drivers' championship, sitting here, there's only a handful of points versus freaking the constructors' championship. There's 30 points between
McLaren's gonna pass Red Bull.
McLaren and Red Bull.
McLaren will win the constructors this year if Red Bull doesn't change anything.
And they're at this rate, they're not.
Yeah, it's a little late now.
Crazy. But
even the drivers were quite surprised with the 20-second gap. You could see in the cool down room, both Max and Charles were like 22 seconds. And I'm waiting. You just know there's going to be they're driving an illegal car investigation.
Because of the George stuff last race and the Alex Albon disqualification this quali, I was really waiting. I mean, so the race ended what, like 4 hours
4
ago?
hours ago.
I was really waiting for an F1 alert either before we filmed this or while we were filming this, being like, Lando Norris disqualified. Like, how to give back the trophy again.
Yeah.
Like,
anyways, let's get into our final thoughts. MC was able to find the information about Haas and their whole situation, and she was also able to take a second to look up what body of water Zandvoort is on, and it's in fact on the North Sea. We did not learn about the North Sea in school.
Yeah, we only learn about the Atlantic and the Pacific.
And the Great Lakes.
The Great Lakes. Sometimes the Finger Lakes in New York.
Maybe the Gulf of Mexico just because of the oil spills.
But we don't learn about the seas, so I'm sorry.
It's not our fault. Don't blame us.
Yeah, blame the American school systems.
Anyways.
Yeah,
Haas.
So I just want to preface that this is all information that's publicly known. I'm not trying to spread disinformation. I'm just saying that because there's a lawsuit and we're teeny tiny people. So
everything that she's saying is alleged.
It's alleged and it can be found online in multiple different articles.
Correct.
So back in 2022, Haas had a few relationships with Russian companies as well as, I believe, a Russian driver.
Nikita Mazepin and his father's company, Uralkali.
So Uralkali is like, they deal with mining. I'm not really sure. They're a Russian-based company. And in 2022, Haas terminated the sponsorship due to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. While reading all of these, it seems like when they terminated the agreement, there was money that Haas had to return. There was probably a termination clause that, like, if you terminate prior to the date of the agreement, like, you have to pay back the advance.
Makes sense.
Apparently, in 2022, they never paid this money back, and they had every right to terminate their agreement, but had to return. And I believe it is reported to be about $9 million.
I heard 10 million.
It's somewhere in that realm. So, apparently, they also were promised a car.
Yeah, the 2021 car.
So, there's that. In June the company contacted a Swiss court and they told Haas, hey, you have to pay. Haas hasn't paid. So what ended up happening was that for some reason the Dutch GP was like the weekend that assets had the possibility to be like seized.
Yeah.
And so
Apparently, the bailiffs showed up to the
yeah, there were
paddock,
like cops and shit there, like
but it
checking
hasn't
out.
really been reported on. Understandably, I think they want to keep it kind of private
I
since it is
think
a
it's
lawsuit.
yeah. Um, but essentially assets are the cars or the equipment, and the Dutch courts are now involved. They're waiting for the company or a colleague to confirm that they've received payment, and then once they do, Haas can move on. But currently, their stuff, including the cars, is stuck at Zandvoort. Monday is apparently the day that the company should be confirming that they receive payment. So hopefully this is just, unfortunately a legal blunder. But yeah, fingers crossed everything goes as planned. But that's a little bit behind it and why there is a possibility that Haas will not be at Monza. Um, so, yeah.
In our Get Ready for Monza episode, if we have any updates on if Haas is free or not, we will let you all know.
Yeah. It's
I was going to
crazy.
make a joke and be like, hashtag free Haas, but
Not
they
appropriate.
do have to send money if they terminated a contract. That is how that works.
Yeah. It just kind of sucks.
It's a
It's
little
like
awkward.
awkward. I think the whole situation, I mean, it was touched upon in Drive to Survive, right? Like I think it's all just a little awkward. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of one of those moments where it's like I hate to see people air out dirty laundry, and that's kind of what this feels like. But
At the same time, I guess if it was paid on time, then it wouldn't be aired out.
I mean, knowing the history of this sport and the level of like cough corruption that can happen in this sport and in like other leagues, um, I think it's not surprising that there's like legal proceedings happening with a team. Like
Oh, no.
I'm sure there's been lawsuits and crazy things that have happened before with sponsors.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think it's just a lot of people are just like, yeah, Haas is stuck in Zandvoort. Um, so yeah, we'll give you guys an update if there is one. If not, we'll tell you after Monza.
One other thing, just to go over in our final thoughts, was when Lando won the race and crossed the finish line, was talking to Will Joseph, his race engineer. His response was, to quote Max Verstappen, simply lovely. And everyone is like, and at Max's home race, bro, like, you already beat him by 22.8 seconds. You don't need to just rub some salt in the wound.
I think um I think seeing them on the podium, you have to
They're
remember
fine.
that they're all like they're outwardly seeming to all be friendly. So I feel like it's just them like nudging the
They're just
like
poking fun at each other, I would
yeah. I
imagine.
think if it's healthy,
Who cares?
yay. um but also like I don't know, I feel like we've also when we've won races and things like that, we've kind of been like egotistical.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything for this race weekend. You'll probably get the Get Ready for Monza episode in like a day or two. And we love Monza. Monza's fun. Last year when we watched Monza, we were traveling a ton. Thank
we
God we won't be this
were.
year. It was wild. We were watching the actual race on the floor of the Honolulu airport.
Yeah, it was. funny
Fun
because
fact, we had gone to Hawaii. We didn't tell you guys where we went for safety reasons,
it
obviously.
was the moment I realized that our family loves us but doesn't care about F1. That they are
No.
sitting there and they are so willing to support the fact that we like do this for fun, and they're probably most of our followers, but that's okay. But I think just sitting there and none of them wanting to watch with us is like
And it was
cool.
the first time we ever watched the Senna movie on the plane,
Oh,
and all of us sobbed.
sobbed. Yeah.
Overall, it's been an entire year of the podcast. We haven't had a chance to say that. So I do want to thank you all who have been watching, whether you're old fans or new fans. We've really enjoyed doing this and hope to continue for as long as we can. We do get to go to our first in-person thing in a couple of weeks when we go to the IndyCar race here in Nashville. So we will be a little late on the Azerbaijan Grand Prix because it happens at the same time as our IndyCar race. So just be patient with us that weekend. But if you want to see IndyCar stuff, make sure to follow us on our socials so that you can see all of that. It'll be super fun. Um, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
If you
Thanks.
like this new setup plus audio, let us know. If you have things that you want us to change, give us your input. We're still figuring out things, want to see what we like, what you guys like. So just let us know.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.